back in town. You hear about Louis Miller? He done disappeared, dear.
Michelle Davis-Newell with us, the author of Ruby Slipper's Fairy Tales My Mother Told Me, Real-Life Truths I Never Told Her. It's a nonfiction novel, and Michelle currently serves as the Director of Programs and Operations with a Chicago nonprofit organization. Ruby Slippers is her second novel. Her first fiction story was published in 2006. She's the co-author of an anthology and is co-founded a small production company with her husband. Michelle, hi, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, and thank you so much for being here. You know, when you really come down to it, well, you know, we talk about the world, and there's so many kids who grow up, and it's not that they don't know, it's what they don't know that they don't know. They get into the teen pregnancies, the abuse, and the rest of it, and it's not that they're warned, but they're not warned in such a way that they can actually relate to it.
Absolutely.
What was it that caused you to put this to pen?
Well, so for me, as an adult going through a lot of issues and circumstances in my life, you know, I started to wonder, why am I constantly repeating some of the same mistakes? Why am I, you know, seeming to repeat some of the same cycles that I saw growing up? And so I had to look introspectively at myself. And I had to say, okay, Michelle, you need to go back to the basics. You know, where did this stuff come from? Where did it all start? And so I went back to my childhood, and I started reliving some of those moments mentally. And I attached those moments to some of the things that was going on later on in life, because everything has a consequence.
Sure.
So everything that happens to you in your childhood, sometimes it can, you know, impact your future if it's not addressed. And so having done those things, having, you know, looked introspectively and figured out what was going on and what mistakes I was making and where those things were coming from, I decided to write those things, and it was actually very therapeutic for me, to be honest with you.
Oh, sure.
And I wanted to share that with the world also as a way to inspire and encourage other young girls and other women that no matter what you've gone through in your life, you actually can overcome anything if you put the work forward.
Oh, and by the way, it's the roadmap. It's the knowing what to do, the process to actually begin and be able to overcome. And I think one of the biggest things kids get into problems with today, boys and girls, is wanting to be accepted. If you are not accepted in the way you've learned acceptance at home, you're going to go look for it outside. And you might get accepted by the wrong people, and those wrong people will get you in trouble. But it's still that belonging that seems to be lacking. And if you don't find family at home, you're going to go find it somewhere else.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think that's where the major problem is. You know, when you talk about, you know, the bullying, the rest of it, when it comes down to it, why does a kid bully? In your determination, what conclusion have you come to why a kid bullies?
Well, I believe one of the things is, you know, sometimes kids may be getting abused themselves. There's something that they're going through personally, and the best way that they can, you know, squash that feeling or deal with it is to hurt others.
Yep.
And so they take their anger and frustration out on others. And, you know, there are some people who have very, very low self-esteem, and in order to feel good about themselves, they have to bully others and put others down because it helps boost their esteem.
Absolutely.
And it's unfortunate.
Yeah, and I think really when you come down to it, that's the main reason when you come right down to the core. People bully because they've been bullied themselves, and and they're not even aware of it. It's an unconscious thing. So to make somebody look lesser, to make you look better, well, what do they care? Then what are they getting? They're getting acceptance from those few kids that are bullying with them, because we have a need we have this need to be loved, and it gives tremendous power to the opinions of other people. And I think there's where the problem is.
Correct.
Acceptance, acceptance, acceptance. And what we do, it's very easy to turn your life over to the expectations of someone else.
It is. But the issue with that, though, is that person just has the expectation, but they don't understand what it takes,
True.
for you to live your life. And so when you get to a point where you're waiting for someone else to approve of you, I mean, you'll be stuck in a cycle forever. You'll never move forward.
Oh, absolutely. That same thing that you've been taught, modeled, well, you in the general sense of the word, the same thing that you've been taught because you wanted acceptance so bad as a kid and you got beat up for it. Well, guess what happens? You meet somebody, you fall in love, you get married. Guess what you got? The bully.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the key,
and it can be a dangerous cycle.
Oh, absolutely. Now, by the way, this denial, and that's really what we're dealing with, is denial. It's like this. It's like a roadblock to keep you from moving forward. And there are people who are stuck in it for the majority of their lives because they don't recognize it and they don't see how to get out of it. I've asked people time and again over the years. I've said, describe your husband or your wife. I'm sorry, to take it back. Describe your father and or your mother emotionally, not physically, but emotionally. And then the next question is define your husband emotionally, or your wife emotionally, or the exes emotionally. And what we normally find is we married the same person with a different body.
Exactly. And it's amazing to me, too, because, like you said, it's denial. If you don't realize where the issues lie, if you don't realize where the problems stem from, you're right. You're going to keep repeating the cycle, but it's going to be in a different form. It's going to be in a different shape. And it's very important to be aware of those things, because if not, like you said, you'll just keep going down the same path, and you'll never come out. You will never come out of that cycle.
Now, by the way, working with women in the girl groups that you do in classrooms and the different places, how would you define, let's not say woman, let's say girl, the young ones today. How would you define a girl 20, 25 years ago as opposed to defining a girl today? The culture is different, everything's different, the mindset is different. Are we talking about two different human beings now?
To a certain extent. There are certain things that will never change, though, and I firmly believe that. But, yeah, because everything is so fast-paced now, and access to everything is just really quick. And so the girl today has more access and more maturity than the girl 20, 25 years ago. And so, and then there's a lot of pressure on women to be, we've always been looked at as the nurturers and, the caretakers. But now there's this added pressure of being the superwoman, because not only are you being the nurturer, the caretaker, but then you also have to be the person that brings home the bacon, fries it up in a pan, so it's like there's so much pressure out there on the woman today as opposed to the young girl 20, 25 years ago. And so if a young girl happens to get stuck today, the good thing is that she has more access to information. She has more access to resources. That didn't really exist as much as it exists now. I mean, back then. 25 years ago, I wish the stuff that's out here now was out there and available for me then. So that's the good part about it, is that there is access to information and resources.
Yeah, I know somebody right now who's 17 years old, and she's pregnant. And she's not out of high school yet. And it's a very interesting situation, because what you're sitting with is one side, the family on one side is saying, you have that baby, I mean, it's yours. And the other family on the other side is saying, get the abortion. And that poor kid is stuck right in the middle of it. Now, she's, And when you do something like that, where do you, where rhetorically, where do you make a decision like that? And, she's being torn from both ends. And the boy is only, 18 years old? What does he know?
Yeah. And it's scary, because the easiest thing in the world, and I don't think teenagers kind of put this together in their minds, the easiest thing in the world sometimes is to get pregnant.
Yeah.
The hardest thing in the world is to actually take care of that child.
Oh, yeah.
It's an emotional thing. It's a physical thing. It's a financial thing. And so for an individual to be at that, because I was 17 when I got pregnant with my first child. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I can do this. I babysat my brother, I babysat my cousins. I can do this. This is not that hard.
Sure.
Yeah. It's the hardest thing. It's the hardest job you will ever have in your life, but you don't realize that when you're a child.
No.
And, it's not something I would wish on anybody. In the perfect world, I would hope that everybody would wait until they are just, career they've gotten their career down packed, and they are ready to really be responsible for a child. But unfortunately, that's not the world we live in. And anybody at 16, 17, even 18 years old having a child, my goodness, not to say that the world has come to an end, but it most certainly has come to a halt.
But by the way, the world comes to an end at that moment because there's a certain part of living and growing that you don't get to have.
It's stifled, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No question about it.
It stunts your growth. It does. It stunts your growth because there's so much that you need to experience in those years that it's stunted.
No, absolutely,
So.
and especially for the young ones, there's a lot of 14, 15-year-olds that, that are getting pregnant today. And the worst part about that is in some of the schools, when I say they're condoning it, not necessarily condoning it, but there are daycares in some of the high schools now.
Oh, yeah.
This doesn't work because I think you said it all, they don't get the growth that they need to be able to teach that child that they're going to have what life is like. How am I going to teach you anything if I've never been there?
That's true. And I think what's happening is that society has really given in to, instead of addressing and working hard to fix the issue, they gave in to the issue and said, okay, let's just go ahead and prepare for it. So there's no more. It doesn't seem to be like an emphasis on prevention. Now it's more about, okay, it's already done, let's intervene, let's see what we can do to make things easier.
Sure, and I think really what the young ones look for, well, even adults, it's this sense of worth, somewhere that you matter. And that's the most important gift that you can give to anyone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it comes down to it, it's this. And there's an example of something I probably used 10 million times, and I'm going to use it another 50 million times. A lot of the problems would stop. It would stop if it was this way. If moms or dads would sit down with their kids, whether they're 10 years old or 17 or 18 years old, and a very simple question that can eliminate so many problems. The question is, how do you know when you're loved? How do you receive it? Because just because we think we know, we don't. We don't know what's in that child's mind or the adult's mind. And if we just ask that question, and once we know and we start doing that, look at the problems that wouldn't have to happen.
And that is such a powerful question to ask a young person, and then you'd be amazed at the responses that you'd get back.
How about if you sat down tonight and asked your husband that?
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Excellent point.
Yeah, no,
yes.
yeah, really, because we take it for granted that we know. We don't know. And that's where the key is. And most people run away because they're not being loved. Not being loved in the way that they've learned to receive it, because the other person thinks they're loving them, but it's not.
Right.
Yeah, it's not being acknowledged. And I think that's a very powerful question that, when you're dealing with your girl groups and your women groups, I bet if you start asking that, I bet you're going to get some very interesting answers.
I'm sure, and it would probably bring out what love isn't, because I think sometimes young people in particular will confuse certain things for love, and it's not really love that they're receiving. But if they've never experienced it or didn't know what it was because that question wasn't asked, then it's very easy to confuse it with something that it's really not.
No, and let me give you a quick analogy. You and I meet, and we get in this great relationship. We fall in love, and for me, the way that I've learned to receive love is a look, a wink, a tone of voice, expression, something that means that I'm being loved. And for you, let's say hypothetically, if I buy you something, it means I love you. So we're going along for 2 years. We move in together, and I'm winking, and I'm using this great tone of voice. I'm doing everything I can to show you I love you. And 2 years later, I walk into the house one day, and you're all packed up. I said, where are you going? What is this? I'm leaving. What do you mean you're leaving? Well, you don't love me. What do you mean I don't love me? You never show me.
Wow.
Yeah, and you never showed me in the way that I've learned to receive it. And I think that is a big problem, not only with adults, but moms and dads and kids and everybody else.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Powerful. That is great. That is an excellent analogy.
Yeah. And when you really come down to it, nobody wants to get into trouble. They want the help. They want somebody who, quote unquote, has been there, done that, to say, you can open it up. Here's a path that you can be on. And most importantly, with the path that they can be on, They've got to know that other people have gone through the same challenges and made the same, well, let's call them mistakes, whatever that means. Because I truly believe there's no such thing as a mistake. If you hadn't had that baby at 17 years old, you and I would not be talking right now. You would not be doing the work that you're doing. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's what it's about, being able to relate to someone on a personal level. And you'd be amazed at how many young people will listen to you.
Yeah.
They will listen. They will hear it because it's, I think folks believe that young people are like brick walls, that nothing goes in, but that's not true. They're listening. Even if they don't do what you say do at that moment, it's at least embedded somewhere in them. You've laid a foundation, and they will definitely heed to that later on in their life when they run up on some of those obstacles.
Yeah, no problem. And I think that, and it comes out unconsciously. It's just a reaction. Because it's like that old analogy. You touch fire, your hand gets burnt, and anytime you get near fire, you're going to have a fear reaction, and your hand's going to jump back.
Absolutely.
Don't even think about it. It's the same thing with saying, if you get slapped on the wrist, that means I don't love you. Maybe not to you, but to the child.
Right.
And so all of these things that happen that we're just not aware of, and we need people who know to be able to help us to say, you have an alternative here. You have a choice. Not that this is right or wrong, but here's a choice.
There are options, and you have to know that they exist and what they are. And I think that's important. And parents, just people in general, need to talk to the young folks, because if you don't, then they are going to make these mistakes, and we wonder why they keep doing the same things. Well, because nobody is sitting down and really talking to them about this can be the result of that choice that you're making. Let's try something different.
Absolutely. Now, I could talk to you about this all night, but Michelle, we're starting to run out of time. Do you have a website we can find you and the book at?
Yes, I do. My website is www.michelledavis-newell.com.
Wonderful. Hey, Michelle, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.